Nobody left. That is the part that nobody who was not there can fully understand. It was a Saturday night in Lyon, July 1987, the kind of July night in the south of France that starts with everything right. The air warm and dry and carrying that particular summer quality that makes outdoor concerts feel like the natural state of human existence. Like this is what human beings were designed to do, to gather under a sky and listen to music together. The Parc de la Tente d'Or, Lyon's magnificent urban park, had been transformed for the occasion into a concert venue of extraordinary scale. 40,000 people had descended on the park from every corner of France and beyond. The grass had been worn flat by feet. The trees at the perimeter of the concert area stood like dark sentinels against the deep blue of the summer evening sky. The stage at the far end of the field was a cathedral of light and steel. Massive speaker towers on both sides, enormous lighting rigs suspended above, the whole structure blazing with the warm amber and white and gold preparation lights of a show that was 90 minutes from beginning, and above all of it, to the southwest, a sky that was changing, not quickly, not yet, but changing. A darkness building at the edge of the horizon that was a different quality of darkness from the ordinary summer night. A heaviness gathering in the air that the most attentive people in the crowd had begun to notice, but that most were choosing to ignore because it was July, and this was France, and 40,000 people had traveled from everywhere to be here, and sometimes weather threatens and then decides not to follow through. The meteorological office in Lyon had issued a warning at 4 in the afternoon. Severe thunderstorms possible in the evening. Possible. That word carried a lot of weight in the minds of the concert organizers who had spent the last 3 hours in increasingly tense conversations with each other and with the tour management. Possible was not certain. Possible was not probable. Possible was the kind of word that let people make the decision they had already decided to make. The decision was to proceed. In his dressing room backstage, a man was sitting in a wooden chair in front of a mirror that was ringed with warm white bulbs casting a clean, honest light across his face. He was wearing at this point a pair of dark indigo jeans, white socks, and a plain white cotton t-shirt. His dark brown, slightly wavy hair was pushed back from his forehead simply. Several days of dark, natural stubble covered his strong jaw and prominent cheekbones. On the costume rail beside him hung the clothes he would wear on stage. A deep cobalt blue shirt in lightweight cotton, with the top 3 buttons open, dark charcoal grey slim-fit trousers, a wide brown leather belt with a simple silver buckle, and dark brown leather boots with a low heel that he had worn on every tour for 3 years because they felt right on stage, and because he had stopped caring about changing things that work. This man was Johnny Hallyday. He was looking at the sky through the small dressing room window, not at his reflection. At the sky. He had been looking at it for the last 20 minutes with the particular attention of someone who has been performing outdoor concerts for 30 years and who has developed a relationship with weather that is partly practical and partly something older and less rational than practical. The sky was telling him something. His tour director, Michel, came in without knocking because he had been working with Johnny for 12 years and had earned that specific right. He was 44 years old, compact and efficient, wearing a dark green polo shirt and black trousers and carrying a radio in one hand and a clipboard in the other. His expression was the expression of a man who is managing several problems simultaneously and has come to add one more to the conversation. The meteorologists are updating, Michel said. The storm is moving faster than projected. They now think it arrives sometime during the show, maybe an hour in, maybe 90 minutes in. Johnny looked at Michel in the mirror. Then he looked back at the sky through the window. How many people are out there? He said. 40,000, said Michel. All seated, all staying. Nobody is leaving. Johnny was quiet for a moment. He picked up his cobalt blue shirt from the costume rail and put it on, buttoned it from the bottom up, leaving the top 3 open, tucked it into the dark charcoal grey trousers, put on the wide brown leather belt and buckled it, sat back down and pulled on the dark brown leather boots. He stood up and looked at himself in the mirror for exactly 2 seconds, which was the same amount of time he had been looking at himself in mirrors before shows for 30 years. If they are staying, he said, I am playing. Michel looked at him. Johnny, he said, the safety protocols require us to stop the show if lightning comes within a certain distance. We cannot control that. I know, said Johnny. He put his hand on Michel's shoulder briefly. We play until we can't, and if we have to stop, we stop, and we come back out the other side. Michel looked at him for a moment longer. Then he wrote something on his clipboard and left. Johnny looked at the sky through the window one more time. Then he picked up his guitar from its stand, a beautiful sunburst Les Paul that he had played on every tour since 1981, and played 3 quiet chords to himself in the small dressing room. Not for anyone, just to feel the instrument under his fingers before the night began. At 9:15, Johnny Hallyday walked onto the stage of the Parc de la Tempête in Lyon, and the 40,000 people who had been waiting in the increasingly charged air of that July evening made a sound that had nothing to do with music yet, and everything to do with 40,000 human beings releasing the same breath at the same moment. He was wearing his cobalt blue shirt open at the collar, and his dark charcoal grey trousers, and his brown leather belt, and his dark brown leather boots. And he walked to the center of the stage under the blazing white and gold and amber stage lighting, with that specific walk of his that had been described 1,000 times, and that was impossible to describe adequately because it was not a performance and not a pose, but simply the way a man moved who had been walking toward audiences for 30 years and had made some kind of peace with that particular direction. He picked up the sunburst Les Paul from the stand at center stage, put the strap over his shoulder, stopped to the microphone. He looked at the sky behind them. He played the first chord of the first song. What happened in the next 45 minutes was the concert that people who were there would spend the rest of their lives trying to describe to people who were not because of the storm. Because of what happened between Johnny Hallyday and 40,000 people in the time before the storm arrived. Something that outdoor concerts can produce when all the conditions are exactly right, and that cannot be manufactured or predicted or repeated. A collective state, a feeling of 40,000 individual people becoming temporarily one thing, the same thing, responding to the same sounds with the same bodies at the same moment under the same sky. He played songs that people had known for 20 years and sang them as if he had written them this morning. He moved across the stage with that physical authority that was entirely natural and entirely unself-conscious. His voice went through the amplification and came back from 40 speaker towers as something that seemed to have no source, as if the music was simply present in the air. The sky behind the crowd was changing. At 10:10, the first lightning appeared at the horizon. Distant, still. A white crack in the dark sky that was there and then not there. Several people in the crowd saw it. Most kept their eyes on the stage. At 10:20, the wind changed. Anyone who has experienced a major thunderstorm approaching an open country knows this wind change. It comes before the rain, before the thunder, before anything visible in the immediate sky. It comes from a different direction from the wind that was there before, and it carries a temperature drop of several degrees in the space of 30 seconds, and it smells of electricity and something ancient and inevitable. 40,000 people felt it simultaneously. Almost none of them moved. Johnny felt it too. He was in the middle of a song, and he felt the wind change on the back of his neck, and in the way the microphone stand moved slightly in front of him, and he kept singing. He looked out at the 40,000 faces looking back at him, and he kept singing. At 10:32, the first thunder arrived. Not distant, close enough that the sound rolled across the park in a wave, and the stage lighting flickered once in response to something in the electrical grid beneath the field. Several children in the crowd moved closer to their parents. The parents stayed where they were. Nobody left. At 10:39, the rain began. Not the gentle beginning rain of a moderate summer shower. The immediate and total rain of a major thunderstorm, the kind that arrives at full intensity within seconds, and that within a minute has soaked everything that is outside, to a degree that is beyond the usual vocabulary of wetness. The rain hit the stage first, then the speaker towers, then the first rows of the crowd, then all 40,000 people in a wave that moved from the stage outward and that produced from 40,000 throats simultaneously a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a gasp, but something in between that had no specific name. Johnny Hallyday stood in the rain on the stage of the Parc de la Tempête and kept playing. His cobalt blue shirt was soaked through within 40 seconds. It went from cobalt blue to a deeper, darker blue, the color of deep water, and it clung to his shoulders and his arms with the weight of the rain. His dark brown wavy hair was flattened against his forehead by the water streaming down his face. The rain ran down his strong jaw and along the line of his dark stubble and fell from his chin. He looked nothing like a performance. He looked like a man standing in a thunderstorm playing a guitar and singing because those were the only things worth doing. The sunburst Les Paul was getting wet. The technicians at the side of the stage were in agony. The monitors were compromised. The lighting rig was responding to the water in ways that were technically concerning and visually spectacular. The beams of white and gold and amber light refracting through the rain into something that was more beautiful than anything the lighting designer had programmed. And the 40,000 people in the field stood in the rain and did not leave. They stood and they sang with him. Every word of every song, the rain running down their faces and soaking their summer clothes t-shirts in every color going dark, with water cotton dresses, transparent in the rain hair plastered flat shoes, filling with water, none of it mattering. All of it completely irrelevant against the fact of the music and the stage and the man on it who was playing through the storm because they were there and because they had not left. At 10:47, a lightning strike hit close enough that the safety threshold was crossed, and Michel came to the side of the stage and made the signal they had agreed. Johnny finished the song he was playing. He stepped to the microphone. He was soaked completely. He looked out at 40,000 people standing in the rain looking back at him. "We have to stop for a few minutes," he said into the microphone. His voice was completely calm. His wet cobalt blue shirt was the color of deep water, and his dark hair was flat against his forehead, and the rain was still coming. And behind him the sky was white with lightning. He pointed to the sky behind him. "But that," he said, "is just weather." He pointed back at the 40,000 people. "And you," he said, "are something else entirely." He stepped back from the microphone. The stage lights went to a safety setting, warm amber and gold, the minimum required. The music stopped. The rain continued. The thunder rolled across the park in long, slow waves. Nobody left. For 23 minutes, 40,000 people stood in a thunderstorm in a park in Lyon and waited. They talked to each other. Strangers who had been standing beside each other all evening and who now became something closer than strangers because shared weather does that to people. They held their soaked programs over their heads. They laughed at each other's drenched states. They shared the umbrellas of those who had brought them. They waited. At 11:11, the lightning moved far enough east that Michel gave the signal. Johnny Hallyday walked back onto the stage. The sound that 40,000 wet people made when he appeared was different from any sound that audience had made before that evening. It was not the excitement of a show beginning. It was something older than that. The sound of people who had chosen something and were expressing that choice. He played for another 45 minutes, in the rain that had reduced to a steady heavy fall, under a sky that still flickered white at its edges, with his cobalt blue shirt darker than night and his boots waterlogged and his dark hair flat against his forehead and his sunburst, Les Paul singing through soaked cables and compromised monitors. He played like the storm was part of the concert, like it had always been part of the plan. When the last song ended and the stage went dark for the final time that night, there was a moment before the applause came. A second of complete silence in which 40,000 wet people stood in a wet field under a clearing sky and simply breathed together. Then the sound came, and it lasted a very long time, and here is what that Saturday night in Lyon leaves with all of us. There are moments in life when everything that is comfortable and convenient and easy is removed by something entirely outside anyone's control, the weather, the circumstance, the unexpected difficulty that arrives in the middle of something you planned and transforms it into something you did not plan. In those moments, most things stop. Most people make the reasonable practical decision to protect themselves from the discomfort. But some things keep going. Some things play through the storm not because they have to and not because they are performing courage, but because the thing they are doing is more important than the rain. And the people who recognize that, who stand in the field and get soaked and stay, those people understand something about what it means to choose something fully. Not when it is easy, when it is raining, What do you stand in the rain for? What is the thing in your life that you would not leave even when the storm arrived? Tell us in the comments, because those answers say more about who you are than almost anything else.